Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to this recording of our 15th survey into the North-South cooperation. We're joined today by our long-time collaborator, our uh, research associate, now Dr. Ben Rosher, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Liverpool. So if you bear with me for a sec, I'm just going to share a screen. So folks, as I say, you're very welcome to this recording of the results of the 15th quarterly survey on conditions for North-South and East-West cooperation after Brexit. I've already introduced Ben. For those who don't know me, my name is Aidan Campbell, and I'm the Research Programme Development Manager at the Centre for Cross-Border Cooperation. So in terms of an introduction, and we might, the quarterly survey, it's a vital means to give us an understanding of the extent to which the necessary conditions for North-South cooperation are being maintained and how relations between civic society organisations and local authorities on the island of Ireland and Great Britain are being safeguarded following the end of the Brexit transition period and the implementation of the protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland. So just to stress, this is looking at both North-South cooperation, but also looking at East-West between organisations either in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland and their counterparts in Great Britain. And the period covered by this survey is July to September 2024. The survey is aimed specifically at civic society organisations and local authorities. And we do that because it's in light of the fact that the mapping exercise of North-South cooperation, which was undertaken in 2017, which seems a long time ago now, but that was undertaken by the UK and EU, and they admitted at the time that that mapping exercise may have overlooked some of the cooperation that those civic society organisations and local authorities are involved in. So that paper said that, or the mapping exercise stated that further areas of informal, local and community-led cooperation may not have been captured by this exercise. So that informal cooperation, we here at the Centre for Cross-Border Cooperation believe this is really important, and it's really sort of the lifeblood of cooperation across the border, north-south, but also between communities and local authorities on an east-west basis. And we believe it's really important to try and capture that cooperation and look at how that's progressing and has been progressing over the past 3 years. And that's what part of the rationale for doing these surveys and continually doing them on a quarterly basis to monitor those conditions. So in terms of the survey, as always, at this point in our sort of presentation of the results, we have to record our thanks. We're enormously grateful to all those organisations and individuals who've responded to the survey, especially those that have responded in previous quarters. And there's quite a cohort of people now who have been continuous responders from the start. And Ben maybe will talk a wee bit more about that further into his presentation. So by having that group of continuous responders, it's been able to let us track how conditions have changed and how people's perceptions of North-South and East-West cooperation have changed over the past 3 years. But I suppose we'd say that we need your ongoing help in responding to future surveys so that we can raise the issues that are important to you, because this is very much a marathon, not a sprint. And we need to keep a track of the issues that are coming up for organisations that are doing this really important work on the ground. The information the survey provides, it doesn't just sit on a shelf. Obviously, we provide, Ben pulls together or writes the briefing based on the quarterly survey results. We record this survey or record this presentation presenting those results. But the information doesn't just sit on the shelf or sit in that briefing report that Ben compiles for us. We use it and we circulate it obviously to other organisations that are involved in protecting North-South and East-West relations and cooperation, not least through the ad hoc group for North-South and East-West cooperation, which the Centre convenes. And those issues that are coming up through the survey, we are proactively using that information and raising issues with those responsible for implementing the protocol or the Windsor framework, namely the UK government and the EU, the European Commission, and through the various structures that we're involved in and other civic society organisations are involved in. So this is an important mechanism for us to raise issues that are affecting North-South and East-West cooperation at grassroots level. So now at this point, I'm going to hand over to Ben, and Ben's going to take us through a short presentation, which is going to look at the findings of this 15th survey, and then we'll have a bit of discussion at the end between Ben and I. So Ben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Aidan. Hello, everybody. Hello again to those of you who joined us before, and welcome to anybody who's joining us for the first time. As Aidan says, today I'm going to be giving a general overview of the results of the 15th quarterly survey on the conditions for North-South and East-West cooperation. A fuller analysis of this is available in the research briefing, which will be out on the website shortly. Today I'm going to give an explanation of the data and a breakdown on the response to this survey before heading into the substantive parts of the analysis, which focus on the experiences and perceptions of cross-border contacts, cooperation and collaboration, both in the North-South and in East-West dimensions. Now, in this round of the survey, 90% of respondents had completed at least one previous round of the survey. And as I mentioned, that this survey has been repeated every quarter since the beginning of 2021, and that there are now a consistently high number of repeat respondents. It means we are in a good position to infer the shape of trends regarding the views and experiences of the protocol and Windsor framework in a practical sense and with a good degree of clarity. These insights are further developed through the inclusion of qualitative responses to the central contextual questions around political and material and regulatory factors and sociological factors. And this allows for more nuanced insights into how respondents are experiencing the changing conditions for North-South and East-West cooperation and their suggestions for material ways to improve these environments. And as always, it should be appreciated that the respondents to this survey and all rounds of this survey all have a wealth of experience, insight and expertise of cross-border cooperation and collaboration. And so the results need to be presented with that in mind, that the people providing this information do this day in, day out. They are experts in this field. Excuse me. So the data for this survey was collected by a survey of self-selected respondents during the 20th of August to the 9th of October 2024 and gathered 31 responses in total. As I said, 90% of respondents have completed at least one previous round of the survey. 45% of the respondents were based in the Republic of Ireland and 45% in Northern Ireland, with 10% having a presence on both sides of the border. So we have a very, very good balance between those operating in the north and south and across the island of Ireland. In this quarter, in terms of North-South contacts and collaboration, 87% of respondents have had meetings with organisations in the other jurisdiction on the island of Ireland. For 45% of respondents, their level of contact this quarter has been at the same level as the last and has increased for 48% of respondents. 85% of respondents reported that meetings with organisations in the other jurisdiction discussed challenges to cross-border cooperation, on occasion for 52% or to a significant extent for 33%. And while it's to be welcome that dialogue is open and that issues are being discussed, it is nevertheless concerning that so much time is still being dedicated to attempting to resolve issues primarily arising from Brexit and around the potential for divergence between North and South. The nature of the challenges discussed were varied, but focused particularly on concerns around lack of funding for cross-border projects and around the potential for divergence. One respondent has said that discussions included divergence of rights on employment inequality, and another has said that there are visa challenges for international researchers travelling for work across the UK and EU. So the concern around divergence and that the impact on employment is very prominent among our respondents. At present, 81% of respondents are currently involved in cross-border collaborations with a partner in the other jurisdiction on the island, and 74% of respondents are actively considering new collaborative projects. So again, this is something that we've seen quite consistently through these surveys, is that the cooperation north and south is quite robust and remains so. 60% of respondents who are presently engaged in cross-border collaboration reports that they were in receipt of funding for those projects specifically, with most respondents saying that one of their core funding sources was the Irish government. So the Irish government are supporting these kinds of initiatives, which is, again, welcome to see. Looking now to perceptions of the contextual environment for cooperation and collaboration. With regard to the North-South political context, 42% of respondents believe that the political context has improved on the previous quarter, and 52% said stayed more or less the same. And this needs to be considered in the context that, while the UK general election has produced a new government and the anticipation of change, during the survey it was still too early to feel the impact of such change. And it also needs to be appreciated that this survey was conducted before the election in Ireland was officially announced, and so we're not able to accommodate for those perceptions and those changes at this point. When we'd asked respondents to develop on their answers around the political context, many pointed to the optimism that has accompanied a change in the UK government, and at the time Simon Harris as the new Taoiseach, as the reason for perceptions of improved conditions. One respondent said that the media coverage of engagement between the Prime Minister and Taoiseach reported efforts to improve UK and Ireland relationships. And another said that they think the new Labour Party government will be more amenable to protecting relations between North and South. Looking towards the social context, 77% of respondents say that the social context has remained the same on the previous quarter, and 16% say it's improved. And again, this needs to be considered in light of the huge sense of improvement that was found in the 12th quarterly survey and the stability we saw through the 13th quarterly survey. And so given where we had been previously at the start of the year and prior to that, since Stormont has up and running again, we seem to sense much more optimism around the social context. However, one respondent did observe that there has been a strong online social alignment of solidarity with the cause of Palestine, and to a lesser extent, somewhat worryingly, there has also been an alignment of communities campaigning against immigration. So while there is a general sense of improvement, there are still issues, particularly around the way that migrants are being treated and perceived in Northern Ireland and Ireland. Now, in terms of the regulatory context, 68% of respondents say that it has remained the same on the previous quarter, with 29% saying they're not sure if and how it has changed. This seems to be down to a lack of communication that's underpinning this uncertainty. One respondent said that they're not aware of any new regulatory conditions that are fostering greater collaboration between communities, but essentially this lack of communication is hindering people's perception and experience in terms of knowing what is changing and how they need to adapt to that. And then with regard to the material context, 71% of respondents believe it's the same as the previous quarter, and again 26% of respondents say they're not sure if or how it has changed. So again, this is primarily due to a lack of communication around change and what people need to be doing. We've also asked respondents for any suggestions they have for improving the conditions for cooperation and collaboration. And in terms of the North-South dimension, there were suggestions for improving conditions specifically in the Northwest, and the need for clarity around paying conditions and differences North and South. One person has suggested that there should be a body focused specifically on the challenges of Derry and Donegal. Although they're in two different jurisdictions, we both share the same, mostly negative statistics regarding employment, disposable income, and long-term inactivity. Another person has said that there should be legislation in Northern Ireland to reflect the Pay Transparency Directive coming into force in the EU in June 2026. That is required under the Windsor Framework and would enhance rights in Northern Ireland, as well as contributing to North-South equivalence of rights and cross-border enjoyment of rights. If we look now towards the East-West dimension, this quarter only 42% of respondents have reported having meetings with organisations in Great Britain. And what is more concerning is that for 71% of respondents, this is the same level of contact as the previous quarter, and it's an increase for 26% of respondents. 77% of respondents report that meetings with partners in Great Britain discussed challenges to cooperation on occasion for 62%, or to a significant extent for 15%. Such challenges were predominantly focused on incompatibility between Northern Ireland and British legislation. Somebody has said that NI and GB legislation is different across a range of areas, so organisations seeking to collaborate on policy responses need to identify which areas can be the subject of joint commentary and which require discrete sections or responses. Another said that different areas of governance and responsibilities and the role of the community sector, grassroots organisations, and partnerships arrangements for integrated in public health need to be operated on a holistic basis. This quarter, 52% of respondents say they are currently involved in collaboration with a Great Britain-based organisation, but only 42% of respondents are actively considering initiating new collaborative projects with organisations in Great Britain. So again, this reflects what we've seen in previous surveys, that while the level of cooperation and collaboration in the North-South dimension is robust and quite high, it is considerably less so in the East-West dimension. It's something that politicians and policymakers across these islands need to get to grips with and begin to encourage more enthusiastically. Only 44% of respondents currently engaged in East-West collaborative projects have reported that their organisation is in receipt of funding for those projects. And again, this is a barrier to East-West cooperation that we've seen consistently through these surveys since 2021 and requires urgent political attention. If we turn now to the perceptions of the contextual environments in the East-West dimension, with regard to the political context, 42% of respondents believe that the political context has remained the same on the previous quarter, and 42% say it's improved compared to only 3% who say it's deteriorated. When we've asked people to expand on this, they again have indicated the change of leadership in both the UK and Ireland as a cause for optimism. One person has said that the new government under Labour appears to be trying to restore good relations. Another said a new government brings new opportunities, and also the Secretary of State is in listening mode. And another has said the resetting of relations between UK and Irish governments presents an opportunity to ensure new obstacles to East-West cooperation are not introduced. With regard to the social context, 65% of respondents report that it has remained the same on the previous quarter, with 16% reporting an improvement. And when we've asked people to develop on their experiences of the social dimension this quarter, one respondent said, as a school involved in the Catalyst Innovation Programme in Belfast for a number of years, we have participated in 2 fully funded visits to Great Britain to explore good practice in a number of schools in relation to skills development, and have brought that good practice back to share with others, and that this programme was fully funded by the Department of the Economy in Northern Ireland. And so we can see that these initiatives are taking place. It's a case of making sure that they continue to, and that they're advertising, that people are availing of those opportunities. And that's what one of the other respondents said, that a lack of real information causes problems. And so it's about making sure people are aware of the opportunities that are available and how to avail of them. With regard to the regulatory context, 71% of respondents say that it has stayed the same over the previous quarter, but none have reported a decline. One respondent did warn that some of the legislation that fell when Parliament was dissolved for the July elections, such as the Data Protection and Digital Information Bill, would have increased divergence from EU standards and raised questions of compliance with the Windsor framework. So if Northern Ireland had not been able to implement it, it would have increased divergence between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And another said there is a degree of continuation of investment for voluntary community sector enterprises that has been carried over from the previous administration. There is an expectation that initiatives such as Right to Buy will strengthen the hand of communities in place-based development and regeneration, and in advancing wealth building and well-being in the economy. However, in Northern Ireland, there's a concern that the opportunities for new regulation will either not extend to Northern Ireland or be watered down by the Northern Ireland Executive. And the community rights agenda is one such concern, as is the new Procurement Act. And so there is concern about whether Northern Ireland will avail of the same opportunities as are available in the rest of the United Kingdom. With regard to the material context, 65% reported that it has remained the same since last quarter, while 26% of respondents say that they do not know if and how it has changed. And again, a lot of this is due to confusion and lack of communication. With one participant has said that they are never sure if we can get products delivered here. Some companies say yes, now they say we don't deliver to the EU. And another has commented that they found East-West collaboration had only been possible through the support of the Catalyst Innovation and funding from the Department of Economy. Without this collaboration would not have happened. In terms of suggestions for improvements, there have been several suggestions such as museum exchanges and school visits to share best practice. One person has said that more direct political engagement and decision-making in Westminster-controlled programmes such as UK Shared Prosperity and Community Ownership Fund. Westminster-controlled finance is less bureaucratic, though its decision-makers are culturally, socially and politically very disconnected from Northern Ireland as a place and from its people, and that there should be more opportunities to network with regional and national state infrastructure organisations and investment to support this. One has suggested to consider increasing loans from British museums of Irish artefacts and artworks to Irish galleries and museums. And finally, another has said to increase annual funding to support school visits to schools in the rest of the UK as part of leadership development, and also share good practice with teaching and learning strategies. We all have the same challenges to overcome in relation to targeting social need, so to explore new practices in other school settings is invaluable. Then we have also asked people what they have experienced since the Assembly has got back up and running again and what they hope from Stormont. One person has said that they would like to see targeted investment to address regional imbalances, particularly Derry as the second city of the north. One has raised a concern that we are in huge danger of back-to-back development problems arising as the south thrives and the north continues to exist in enforced austerity. And one has said that there was a very positive response by the Northern Ireland Education Minister to Shout Ireland funding to the RAISE programme to address educational underachievement in Northern Ireland, and also proposed funding for T-Rex to expand into Northern Ireland, which is to be welcomed. So to wrap up this summary of the survey then, the return of the Executive and the Assembly to Stormont has led to increased optimism both in terms of the North-South and East-West context for cooperation and collaboration. And we are starting to see some cooling of that enthusiasm. And so it's imperative that the executive act to take advantage of the goodwill they do still hold among civic society. And while it still lags heavily behind the level of cooperation and collaboration in the North-South dimension, we have started to see this quarter a small sense of improvement in the East-West dimension. This seems to be no small part due to the optimism that's accompanied the new Labour government in Westminster and the sense that they, and particularly Hilary Benn, the new Northern Ireland Secretary, are willing to listen more actively to Northern Ireland. And so what is crucial in that regard then is that the new Labour government does not squander the goodwill that is clearly evident among civic society, but instead builds on it and fosters it and makes sure that this comes to fruition in something that people can feel in their actual lives, in their livelihoods. And with that, I will finish. Thank you very much.
Ben, that's fantastic. Thanks very much for sure. Doing the summary and then sharing your insights.
Terribly sorry, and I can't hear you. Your speaker's just gone, or maybe my speaker's gone.
No, but I can hear you fine. Can you hear me now?
No, it's very quiet. There could be an issue with my speakers. Hold on 1 second. Let me just turn everything up. Okay. That's a bit better. Yeah, that's just my speakers. I think are on a bit of a funny one, but I can hear you now.
Actually can't find out how to stop the share, but there was a few really things I wanted to pick up just in the discussion. I see, like, the first thing to note is that when a couple of surveys back we were getting a bit of concern that we had an imbalance in terms of respondents, that we had more respondents from the southern side than we had from the northern side. But I think, I mean, that's the last two surveys I think has gone back to our more sort of stable a more representative sample of that 45% on the northern side, 45% organisations based or respondents based on the southern side, and then that 10% based on both. So I think that you'd be fair to say then that normal service in regard to the spread.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to have that balance so we can get insights from across the board, as it were.
Yeah. And then I suppose the political context then north-south, I think what was coming across to me in your presentation and in the briefing is basically broadly positive. And that comments reflect early indication at least of the potential for that improved relationship between the UK government and the Irish government.
Yeah, absolutely. Hilary Benn does seem to be rather key to this. Obviously, he's very knowledgeable and engaged in terms of Northern Ireland, and that does seem to help, particularly given sort of perceptions of the Northern Ireland role as generally something of an afterthought. Putting Hilary Benn in there, I think, was a wise move, and so hopefully that is something that can be built on, and that the optimism is realised.
Yeah. But what I suppose what I did notice then, or what comes across in the presentation and in the briefing as well, is in some of the comments that although people are generally welcoming of the restoration of the assembly, there's a mixed bag in terms of comments, with some respondents seeing the operation of a functioning assembly and executive as a positive in itself. The fact that the structures are up and running, that Strand 1 is back, that it allows the Strand 2 and Strand 3 to function in a more holistic way is a positive. And some comments then, or some respondents, more impatient for actions and decision and actual progress on issues that matter to them in the work that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's in the beginning we saw this optimism of Strand 1 coming back on, and we cautioned then that the optimism is well and good, but that politicians need to make good on the promises and the potential, and that people are not necessarily seeing this. The goodwill is starting to cool, and I think folk in Strand 1 do need to realise that they need to act on these things in order to continue to foster that goodwill, because it is there and it can do excellent things, but they need to make sure that they are encouraging and delivering on what they should be doing.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of East-West contact, Ben, and I mean, obviously it's a perennial issue that we talk about in these presentations, is the much lower level of East-West contact compared to North-South, and that comes through again in this quarter. But I suppose it's fair to say that there was fairly positive feedback in terms of the political context East-West, and that's there's a fairly high percentage of people who viewed it to have improved in the previous quarter. But I think much else, it's in the East-West context is in a wait and see mode as a new UK government beds in, and probably some of that maybe is due to the long lead in into the budget that we saw, which coincided with the period of this survey, and lots of speculation then on a return to austerity and how the new government was going to fill the gap in Treasury funding or deficits that they had inherited from the previous government. Do you think is that some, probably that wait and see, that trepidation is balanced by that concern around, or in that period anyway, the concern around what was coming in the budget?
I think that's partly it, and it wouldn't surprise me given the agricultural nature of the border region that we don't start to see some concerns arise in terms of the inheritance tax and the farmlands and the way that that's changed in the next survey. Obviously, it impacts a fairly small proportion of farmland across the UK, but it nevertheless does have impacts. And even beyond the material impacts, people are going to have to change their planning, and it's causing a concern even for people who are not being necessarily impacted because of the uncertainty that sits around it. So that's, I think, will feed into some responses next time round.
Yeah, probably. I'd imagine you'd be right. And the final thing, Ben, I just wanted to pick up on, I thought it was an interesting comment that came through in terms of East-West improvements for East-West cooperation. This idea of there was a specific comment on the UK's Shared Prosperity Fund and the Community Ownership Fund, and it was nearly a comment in two parts, where that sort of more direct they're basically calling for more direct political engagement and decision making. I was taking it, interpreting the comment to be from, a Northern Ireland perspective into those central UK funding pots, because on the one hand they can be seen that funding can be seen as less bureaucratic. But I thought it was a really interesting reflection in that, a lot of the officials running them, then there's a disconnect, culturally, socially, and politically from Northern Ireland. I thought it was quite an interesting reflection. I don't know if you wanted to say more on that, or,
I think it is an interesting insight. And one of the things that we find constantly is that there's a lack of dedicated funding from the UK government for East-West cooperative and collaborative projects. And I think that this really does hit the nail on the head in some ways, in that too often policymakers see sort of the UK as GB rather than a holistic United Kingdom. And so that is an insight that needs to be fed back up. And as you say, these reports don't get sat on the shelf, and that's something that it's our responsibility to do, to take these insights and to feed them back up to try and generate change in the right direction.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a really interesting, insightful comment, I thought.
Yeah.
Ben, that's brilliant. I think we're almost at the end at this stage. So it just, I suppose, to you, it's just to thank you again for your work and for your presentation this morning and for pulling the briefing together. And I suppose to anyone out there who's listening or wants to take part, keep an eye on our website. And the 16th survey will be out in the next quarter, and we would encourage people that are involved in either North-South or East-West cooperation to complete that survey so we can hear your views and represent your concerns and your issues, so that the conditions for North-South and East-West cooperation are protected.
Thank you.
Thank you.